Thank you for joining us in Finding God in Video Games. In today's Rewind, we're going to start things off with a quick exercise. So if you're currently playing through a video game, raise your hand. Okay. If you're also playing through another game simultaneously, raise another hand. If in addition to those two games, you have yet another game, maybe in the queue, that you're still kind of messing around with, raise another hand. And finally, if those games are on entirely different platforms, raise one more hand. Okay, now the good news is we've identified that there's a lot of games that we all need to play. The bad news is we've identified there's a lot of games that we're all trying to play at the same time. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably have a few games in rotation right now. I mean, right now I am actively playing Jedi Survivor, all right? But I'm also kind of in the early exploratory stages of an entirely different game, Goat Simulator. But when I play games with my friends right now, mostly we just want to play Halo Infinite. And then when I play games with my daughter right now, we've been playing PJ Masks. And then, of course, my Switch could jump into the rotation at any given time. And so, I mean, this one's still in the shrink wrap. So we've got a dilemma here. Too many games, not enough time. By the way, you can put your hands down. If I didn't say that already, I probably should have said that. If you've been holding them up, that was at least a nice little quality workout. So this may come as a surprise to those of you that know me, but I only have one brain. All right? I know, don't contain your gasps of shock and horror. I'm sure that's surprising and horrifying to everyone. While my demeanor may indicate I know exactly what I'm doing and where I'm going, the truth is my thoughts are typically stuck somewhere between trying to remember pro wrestling factoids and deciding if I still want tacos for dinner. The answer to both of those is it was Giant Gonzalez at WrestleMania 9, and yes, I do want tacos in that specific order. The problem I find myself running into is I have a limited bandwidth on the information that I can retain on each of these games. So when I'm playing them, there's things that are fairly important that I can forget, like, you know, what the buttons actually do or where I was going next. Many times, if it's been a little while between sessions, I might start the game up only to remember that the reason I put it down in the first place is because I was stuck somewhere. And now I can't even remember what I was stuck on, what exactly I was trying to do that got me stuck. Every time I think that I'm pushing the jump button, I end up throwing a grenade because that's what I do in this game, but not in this one. And because of that, you know, throwing that grenade right next to me definitely didn't help unstick me from the situation that I was trapped in the first place. Typically just made it a little bit worse. Now, those are all self-inflicted wounds. I could probably be patient. I could play one game at a time, and I could only move on to the next game when I'm finished with the one I was playing originally. But that's almost like going to like Baskin Robbins and only sampling one flavor. I mean, I know which one I want. That doesn't mean I don't want to try a few other flavors as well, just in case one of them becomes my new favorite. But the unintended outcome of playing all of these different games simultaneously is I become less skilled at each one of them because of my refusal to focus on just one at a time. I spend the first 20 minutes of the game just trying to get my bearings and figure out what each button does, how to use the map, which thing I was going to do next. But then once I finally got to that place, I'm probably almost out of time. You know, got to take care of children, got to take the trash out, got to get ready for work, and come to the realization that those tacos for dinner are not just going to make themselves. See what I did there? I went back to the taco thing, brought the dinner tacos back into it. That's called continuity. Rise of Skywalker. Take some notes. While playing video games, there's definitely a drop in my performance because I have to ease my way back into a game after bouncing back and forth between multiple titles. Now, elite gamers, especially if they're on the esports circuit, they typically restrain themselves to very few game choices so they can train their reflexes and become the very best at their game of choice. Interjecting other titles can cause, even if it's just a momentary lag in our decision-making processes, can make that split-second difference where we're not allowing our muscle memory to make that decision for us. That can be the difference between winning and losing. So even though there are a whole lot of great games out there to play, those very dedicated gamers restrain themselves to mastering a few select titles so they can compete at the highest levels. Now, that same lack of restraint that I struggle with in my gaming is present in my day-to-day life as well. I don't wake up in the morning and think, let's see, how many things could I be terrible at today? But many times, still find my way there. Not because I lack the right intentions, or even because of my limited capabilities, but because I am a man divided across too many battlefields. All of these competing priorities cause mental congestion, and instead of delivering on who I want to be, I find more often than not I provide a very watered down version of myself across each of these competing goals. In the book of James, there's an excellent piece of wisdom. And while there's definitely an appropriate context to this statement that we'll hit here in a second, I think the sentence stands alone very well when James 1:8 says, "He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways." Many of us battle with being of two minds more than we care to admit. Not necessarily two opposing views simultaneously in the same brain, but simply a division of our resources across competing fronts. We want to get into peak physical shape. We also want to excel at our work and school objectives. We want healthy relationships with our loved ones, but we also want to invest into our hobbies and our passions. We know we want to place God at the center of all we do, but in reality, we often provide Him with only the time that we have left over after we've exhausted ourselves with all these other priorities in life. And don't forget about those tacos. Somebody's still got to make them. So what is the solution to this double-minded epidemic that only seems to get worse the more we try to simplify our lives? It's finally time to investigate the full context around that verse that I shared earlier and the concept of being double-minded. James 1:5-8 says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways." So let's unpack that a little bit. The reason that we're double-minded is not necessarily because we want different things or the wrong things. It's because we think we are responsible for all of these outcomes ourselves without the Lord's involvement. God is not requiring us to be wise. He is telling us to ask Him for His wisdom, so He can guide our paths. Saying a prayer to God once we're already halfway to our destination or at the end of our decision-making process makes zero sense. But more importantly, it illustrates a lack of actual faith that He will provide a response or guidance. If we're simply praying as a matter of form or function instead of with the actual belief that He's here to guide our path, then we are truly the most unstable of all of God's creation. We cannot achieve success in any area of our lives when our paths are not centered on receiving His wisdom first. Let's look at this practically. We all have responsibilities in life, people who depend on us in a variety of ways, and the basics of self-preservation to attend to. All of these things are necessary. They're God-ordained, and they are good. But when we try to do any of these without allowing the Lord to direct us and guide us and provide for us, we're demonstrating a dangerous split in our psyche. We're simultaneously acknowledging His priorities for us without actually permitting Him to be involved with the execution of them. The Lord placed it on our hearts to be providers, nurturers, friends, hard workers, and so much more. But when we pursue each of these areas without His overarching wisdom to guide us, we are doomed to frantically chase one objective after another and exhaust ourselves in the pursuit of each of them. Think about Jesus for the moment. He was sent to this planet with the largest mission that any human has ever carried, the responsibility to lead a flawless, sinless life and save the entire human race with His sacrifice. No matter how challenging any of our particular situations are, I'm pretty comfortable with the knowledge that He has us all beat in that department. But as we read through the New Testament, there's something remarkably consistent with Jesus. He never really demonstrated stress. He never really seemed in much of a hurry, and He never showed panic. He had the largest, most complicated mission any of us will ever carry, and yet He never seemed the least bit concerned with His ability to deliver on it. He was the very definition of single-minded. There's a reason for that. Just let me read a few of these. Let me know when you sense a theme. Mark 1:35 says, "Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed." Matthew 14:23, "When he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was alone there." Luke 6:12, "Now it came to pass in those days that he went out to the mountain to pray and continued all night in prayer to God." So it seems to me there is a simple cure for the double-minded syndrome. It's in allowing our easily distracted and compromised minds to become one with the mind of God. And how do we do that? How do we rise above the stress, the anxiety, the fear, the panic, and the continuing realization that we still have not started making that taco dinner yet? One way, and one way only, through seeking God's wisdom through prayer. If Jesus seemed to think it was important, then here's a newsflash for all of us. It probably is. He had a whole lot to do and a very short amount of time to do it in, but he never allowed those seemingly competing priorities to have a single opportunity to alter the wisdom that he needed to receive from the Father each and every day. So when we feel overwhelmed with our seemingly endless parade of responsibilities and goals, and we're growing frustrated with an ever-decreasing capacity to achieve them, this message is for us. There is a false belief I've heard too many well-meaning people and even a lot of believers say, that God will never put more on us than we're able to bear. Well, that's pretty bad news. That is not a verse in the Bible. Not any version of the Bible. Not even those random weird translations that you can get by sending in 3 proofs of purchase from specially marked boxes of Frosted Flakes cereal. That verse is simply not in there. That is a gross misinterpretation of 1 Corinthians 10:13. Something that, not time for this video, I definitely encourage you to study when you have time to see it for yourself. The truth is, God will absolutely give us more than we can bear, because we were never meant to carry this burden alone. We simply cannot do what God has placed us here on the earth to do without Him. Not in just some existential sense, but in a very real, very present, very intentional way. Only through consciously involving Him in our daily life, through constant prayer and seeking His wisdom for all of life's many challenges and questions, can we have a singular mind in which everything He's placed in our hearts to do becomes achievable. Not because He will magically give us more hours in the day or make, tacos appear in the kitchen, but because the little that we have becomes much in His hands. When I try to apply my already very limited gaming skills across multiple different titles in a short period of time, I am doomed to struggle with each of them. Not only am I wildly unsuccessful, but I don't really enjoy the experience either. It kind of defeats the purpose of playing games in the first place. Similarly, when we fail to make God an ever-present part of all of our decisions, our plans, our daily actions, we are choosing the most difficult, least enjoyable, and least successful path to the finish line. Single-mindedness only comes from aligning our minds through prayer with the mind of our Creator, never the other way around.